Today is Mother's Day, and I love Mother's Day, but I dislike all holidays because that tells me what sermon I'm supposed to preach, and I don't like to do that. I like to be free to preach whatever I want, but I always have to have a Mother's Day sermon. And I will tell you that a lot of the things I learned and were thinking about for Mother's Day is going to show up in a Father's Day sermon. So, just warning you, but one of the most famous quotes, and is probably quoted in 2/3 of the pulpits across the United States today, is from Abraham Lincoln. And he said, "All that I am and all that I ever hope to be, I owe to my dear mother." And I think there's an awful lot of us that can echo that sentiment. Now, I saw a joke. And it said, statistically, Mother's Day is the lowest crime day in the United States. And he said, well, I guess that's because all those criminal moms are having brunch with their children. But really what that teaches you, because it does teach you something. Even criminals love their mothers. Now, I'm gonna ask you a question, and I don't know if you'll come up with the answer that I did. But I want you to think about Jesus. Think about all you know about Jesus. Who he was, what his character was. And now, I want you to think of Jesus with a human face. Now, I don't know about you, but I get my mother and my grandmother's face on that. Because they're the people in my life that most exemplify Jesus. When you think about the characteristics that Jesus has, who comes to your mind? Who's the one who was there forgiving you when you messed up? Who was the one who was there teaching you the Bible stories? Who was the one that did all of that? For most of us, it was Mom. Even if your dad was a preacher. Dads tried, but those of our generation found it hard to do the things that we really ought to have done as fathers. In fact, we went to see Grant in the play Footloose, and when I met the actor who was playing the preacher, I said, "Yeah, I'm Grant's preacher, and you're the preacher in this, and you're the villain, and I'm the villain too." You know? Because sometimes when you try to help people, you can come off a little bit harsh and strong. Maybe more than you want to. Now I will tell you that there are a lot of scriptures about women in the Bible. A multitude of them. However, you don't find many about them being mothering. You don't find a whole lot of that. You can find verses that deal with a mother-in-law. You can find all sorts of things, but coming up with good scriptures about mothering, we're pretty much stuck with Proverbs 31. You know, we go there all the time. And I'll probably hit a few of those. But I'm going to hit two other verses that one of them came to me in the night, and my wife reminded me this morning. And that's where we're going to start here. 2 Timothy 1:5. I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now I am sure dwells in you as well. A lot of times when we think of mothering, we think of kissing boo-boos, cleaning up scraped knees, making sure the kids have clean clothes to go to school, fixing the meals, doing all of those things. But isn't it strange that the one verse that really talks about mothers and grandmothers isn't talking about making sure that the kids have their clothes done right or all of that. Yes, it does have both of that in Proverbs 31. But the thing that is crystal clear to me is the primary job of a mother is to instill faith in her children. Now, Timothy's dad had an excuse. He wasn't Jewish. He had an excuse. Many of us don't have an excuse for not sharing in that responsibility. But the fact is that duty rests, unfortunately, on the shoulders of you mothers and you grandmothers. You're the ones that are probably going to tell the Bible stories to the kids. You're the ones that are going to be there and tell them, I know he was mean to you, but you need to turn the other cheek. Because the dad, even a Christian dad, is like, yeah, I'll pop him back. You know, it's... Mothers are where we learn so many of the godly traits that we have. Now, my mother was probably one of the most submissive women you would ever meet. Whatever Dad wanted, Dad got. You know, that was just simple. You know, I mean, when Dad spoke, it was like the heavens opened up and the voice of God thundered down. And she did whatever he wanted. Most of the time. But when it came to right and wrong and God, she put her foot down. And when she put her foot down, those heavens closed up and the voice didn't thunder anymore. When when she put her foot down, she put her foot down. That didn't happen very often. First time I remember was when we moved to Redding, California. I was born in Lindsay, and we lived in that area down there where all of the Texans, Okies, and Arkies lived. There's a little area down there with Sanger and Reedley and Parlier and all those places. And we lived in Delano. That's right by there. That's all. And we went to church. Not every Sunday, but we went to church. But when Dad got transferred up to Redding, that's the whole other end of the state. Mom said, "You are taking me away from my family. We are going to church for a church family." And we went every Sunday. We didn't go many Wednesdays, but we lived about 8 miles out of town too. And Dad didn't go to church. I'll just tell this story because I think it's important. Dad would drive us. We lived up in Toyon. It's Shasta Lake City now, but we lived up in the government camp there, and we would drive into Redding to go to church. And my mom, my sister, and I would go to church, and my dad would sit out in the parking lot in the car. Every Sunday, he would sit out there in the parking lot in the car. One day, he heard a huge bang. Some kid was making homemade firecrackers by putting black powder in a pipe. That's a mistake. My dad ran over, because the kid was on fire, put him on fire, got all that done. Next Sunday he was in church, and he was in church the rest of his life every Sunday. Now I don't know whether that's because he didn't want to have to go through that again, or whether that woke him up. But in a way, you can say that my mother's faith saved that boy's life. Because if my mama wasn't going to church, Daddy wouldn't have been in the parking lot. Now, we'll read another verse from 2 Timothy. This is in the 3rd chapter, verses 14 and 15. But as for you, continue in what you have learned and have firmly believed, knowing from who you learned it, and how from childhood you have been acquainted with the sacred writings, which are able to make you wise for salvation through faith in Christ Jesus. Yes, some of this is talking about the things that he's learned from Paul. But Paul wasn't there when he was a child. He knows that this faith that he has, that Timothy has, he's learned from childhood. He's learned to look at the sacred writings, which are able to make you wise for salvation. mothers today, and as we think about our mothers that aren't here, I think we need to take a lesson from Timothy. Because Timothy didn't forget what he learned at his mother's knee. Way too often, when we grow up and leave the nest, whether it's to go to college or whether it's to get a job, well, those teachings just aren't that important anymore. Church just isn't that important anymore. We just don't go. Be like Timothy. Be like Timothy. And don't forget what you learned at your mother's knee. Because I will tell you that there is nothing to compare with the feeling that a mother gets when they see their child faithful to the Lord. Well, there is one that's very similar. That's when a father comes to Jesus. And the daughter sees that. We read today in the Bible study about how Abraham died and was gathered to his people. Well, he was gathered to where his wife was buried into his country. And when I pass away, I'm going to be gathered to where my people are. But there's another gathering of our people. When we pass away, that cemetery is not where we're going to stay. Someday, that grave is going to pop open. Someday, the sea is going to boil. Someday, those ashes are going to come together. And for some people, that will be the greatest day on the face of the earth. The day they've been waiting for their whole lives. The whole time that they've even been in the grave, they've been waiting for that day. And for others, it will be the day that they've been ready. There's an old gospel folk song, "Rock, Will You Hide Me?" The rocks won't hide you. Do your mama a favor. Be as faithful as she is. And if you're a mom or a dad that's not faithful, do your kids a favor. Be faithful. I'm going to go now to Proverbs 31. I think it's a sin not to go there on Mother's Day, you know, when we just have to do that. Verse 10. An excellent wife who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. What does that have to do with being a good mother? Being a good mother starts with being a good wife. Your kids don't see the relationship that you should have between husband and wife. A lot of the things you tell them is just not going to make any difference. Go down to verse 25. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, he praises her. You know, we've been talking about mothers, and mothers who fit these criteria. I want you to stop and think. I wish it was true for all mothers that every woman that bore a child loved that child and taught them and help them. Unfortunately, that's not true. Some mothers neglect, abuse, and harm their children. Some physically, some emotionally. So what I want you to do is I want you to look at your mama, whether she's here or not, whether she's still alive or not, and say thank you. And thank God that you had a mother that loved you. And give her the praise that she deserves for loving you when you were unlovable. Because whoever you are, there were times that you were totally unlovable. And your mama still loved you. I always feel funny about preaching a Mother's Day sermon because almost everything that we praise our mothers for are what our Father God stands for. Understand that the good things that your mothers do are when they mirror what God and Jesus do. And look up to that. Respect that. And I'm going to give you a preview of my Father's Day sermon. Men, get your act together. Get your act together. Mama shouldn't be the only one that tells the child Bible stories. Mama shouldn't be the only one that kisses boo-boos and cleans up skin knees. Mama shouldn't be the only one that says, turn the other cheek. shame that our society has turned the qualities of a father into qualities that you only find in the mother. Teach your children, teach your grandchildren that those qualities that we praise in mothers are God's qualities, and that the qualities that you should find in all of us. If anybody needs to answer the invitation of public, well, you can come now as we stand and as we sing.
Have you been to Jesus for the cleansing power? Are you washed in the blood